Hello, today we're going to talk about components of a letter of intent. A letter of intent, or LOI as it is typically known, is an agreement that describes, in some cases less, in some cases more detail, the purchaser's intent to purchase the assets or equity of the business. A letter of intent is generally used for lower middle market transactions, and where the purchaser is usually a strategic or synergistic financial buyer with typically transaction values, I would say, higher than a couple $1 million. A letter of intent can be as short as one page, or it could be multiple pages, but generally shorter than an offer to purchase, or certainly shorter than a definitive agreement. For smaller businesses, a more effective instrument may be an offer to purchase. A letter of intent is just that. It is a letter, and hence it is typically written in the format of a letter, and is most often not considered a legal document, and usually has limited binding provisions. Much like an offer to purchase, but less binding on the parties, the LOI becomes the precursor to the actual definitive agreement of purchase and sale, and nothing in the agreement of purchase and sale should really contradict the language in the letter of intent. In drafting a letter of intent, one will always be best served by having it done by a professional business broker, intermediary, or a lawyer. The object of the short video blog on the subject matter is really not to assist you in developing your own letter of intent, but rather making you aware of the many components to an LOI so that you may make more educated observations and comments when working with a professional in developing such an instrument. Typically, the LOI should be very clear on the distinctions between the binding and non-binding provisions, and the purchaser should be aware of the effects thereof, both the binding and non-binding effects. Once that has been made clear, the second section of the LOI should identify what the intent contemplated is. By example, the prospective purchaser will acquire from the vendor all of the issued and outstanding shares of the corporation, blah, blah, blah. Thereafter could be the general terms and conditions under which such acquisition will take place. Some example of these items may be the price, how the price is to be paid, the terms, conditions under which the price has been considered, and hence expected provisions and or conditions under which the transaction will take place. Also, binding provisions such as non-disclosure, exclusivity, due diligence, access to information, cost responsibilities, and much more could be articulated in specific sections thereof. Naturally, different language will be required for a share or stock purchase and sale versus an asset purchase and sale. In general terms, a letter of intent is an instrument that sets out the very basic parameters to a potential transaction and sets the stage for a purchaser to commence the due diligence process in order to determine if, 1, they are interested in closing the transaction, and 2, if the purchase price they are paying is justified in their own minds. And of course, subject to the findings during this process, often the vendor and the purchaser and their respective advisors will negotiate to a stage of mutual benefit with a close or a termination of the intent. To learn more about what the advantages and disadvantages may be in your particular contemplated transaction, give us a call. We can assess the best fit for your contemplated purchase or sale. Or call your legal advisor, but be aware that most often the preferred route will be a letter of intent, since it affords them the best opportunity to draft a document that best reflects their negotiated position, yet not necessarily those already negotiated or agreed to by the vendor and the purchaser, and not always in your best interest.